All right, so what Kevin's handing out is an organizer that has 6 weapons associated with this industrialized total war. All right, and these are newer weapons that sprung up during the conflict. Now I'm going to explain to you what these are tomorrow. Okay, I mean you can kind of understand. Oh, that's a rifle. That looks like a machine gun. That's a blimp. That's a plane. Like, right? So you obviously can pick up on that. What I want us to do today is we're going to do some individual work, some small groups, some whole class stuff. What I want you to do is take the next 10 minutes, and I want you to look at these weapons with this question in mind and answer this in the top part of those boxes. This is a question I want you to consider. What problem does this solve? All of these 6 things in front of you solve a problem. We talked yesterday about trench warfare. We know that it didn't move very far and very slowly, and it was boring and gross and all those sort of things. But as the war wears on, that industrial might and engineering mind power of these nations kicked in. And we started to see different solutions and different applications. So go ahead and, like I said, just by yourself, think about what does this problem solve, and then we're gonna share with our neighbors, and then finally we'll have a class discussion, see if we can come up with some good intellectual answers. Go ahead. Now remember, asking or answering the question, what problem does this solve, is not the same as what does this do? Right? Oftentimes our initial reaction is to answer the question, what does this do? Well, this shoots bolts really fast. That's true, it does do that. But what problem does it solve? It's a little higher thinking. Some of your answers are quite witty, quite impressive. Holly Helminger, no, what she do? Oh, yeah, which one? Okay, that makes sense. Oh, that's cool. How long has she done that? Oh, okay. Good. Does she travel a lot then? Okay, I know not all of you are done, and that's okay. What I want you to do is you talk through these solutions with the people around you, is also consider to help answer this question: what kind of scenario would this weapon be useful in? That will help you answer the question: what problem does this solve? Also, so many things in our society are solutions to problems that we don't think of it that way. We just think of, ooh, a new thing. For instance, how many of you are familiar with the service Uber? Anybody know what Uber is? Most of you know what Uber is. For those of you, well, let me ask you, what problem does Uber solve? Then Nick? Okay, people who don't have a car, not being able to drive. Maybe you're out on a Friday night, okay, and you should be driving home. Okay, good. And Uber is a service that answers those questions. It solves those problems. And it's on your phone. You don't have to call 555-1234 and have Yellow Taxi Cab pick you up anymore. You open up your phone, open up the app, say, come pick me up. It knows where you are, obviously. It has your Visa or credit card information, so you don't have to exchange any money with the driver, and the ability to tip him or her at the end when you get to your destination. It solves a lot of problems. These pieces of technology in front of you solved some problems. Okay, so go ahead and discuss amongst yourselves those questions. Feel free to move around too. You don't have to stay in your neighborhood. All right, which one are we talking about? Okay, what problem do you think that solves?
Soldiers being too heavy, like when they're walking.
Okay. Okay, I like that. I like that thinking.
Alright.
Excuse me.
Think they want to travel?
All right, what do you think? What problem do you think the tank solves?
They blew up buildings and bunkers and stuff that people were. That's what I think.
Not the ones used in World War I. These are very crude tanks.
very rudimentary, which means simple. Okay, Mason, yes, question.
I have no idea what the blips are used for.
What's that?
I have no idea what blips are used for.
Okay. Think about we know we're in a trench warfare environment. And we know that blimps move fast and they float in the air. Or sorry, they move slow and they move in the air. They float in the air. Well, what possibly could that help out with in a trench warfare environment?
Dude, I'm trying to make guesses here.
Right, what solution does the machine gun have, you think?
Shoot farther, kill people faster. Yeah.
It does do that, but what problem does it solve? It does shoot fast. What's that, Troy? What's that?
I said, like, in trench warfare and stuff, like, it would be able to, like, stop attacks and stuff.
So it solves the problem of... Yes, yes. Oh, we talked about it yesterday, like, if those guys over there got up out of their trenches and started running towards your trenches, you have to have a solution for that. Machine gun definitely does that. Good. You guys come up with a solution for the blimp?
Yeah, we put like enemies that are dug in trenches.
What about them?
It can solve problems because you can like drop bombs on them.
Not quite. Close. It does. I mean, you think about it. We know we're in a trench warfare environment, right? And we know there's these miles, hundreds of miles of extensive trenches. So to have a piece of technology that can float in the air for long periods of time at pretty high distances to see out.
That's the other thing is that we can also like see your surroundings and see what's happening.
Right. You want to see not what's happening. You want to see, again, your trench system, their trench system. You have the ability to rise up and see greater area. How does that help you? You guys come up with a solution for the blimp, aka the Zeppelin?
Faster travel with trucks. And solve the bombing not being accurate enough and not being safe.
And it solves the stalemate because, like, if everybody's just, like, staying in their trenches, then you can take bombs over people.
Okay, well, let me help you out with that. And again, you guys don't know. I haven't explained these. So what I like about doing this is that I like to see what you come up with. So the blimps couldn't drop bombs. So, well, we talked about it yesterday about how, our chairs this classroom's kind of set up. They're looking at you, you're looking at them. Imagine you have hundreds, if not thousands of miles of trenches. They have hundreds or thousands of miles of trenches. Machine gun entrenchments. So to be able to get into a balloon, basically, and float for long periods of time at high altitudes lets you see further. If you've ever been to the top of a tall building, and it's fun, I've been to the top of the Terminal Tower and the CN Tower in Toronto, and it's always fun to get up on top of a building because it just gives you a whole different perspective. Does? All right. What did we come up with? What was the solution that the tank solved, or what was the problem that the tank solved?
I don't even know what tanks do.
Okay.
It could keep a soldier inside.
Eventually, they're going to get to that. But if not inside, then behind. So a tank is the first ones, the crude ones they used in World War I. Excuse me, were armored. So you have a guy inside that was able to steer it, and maybe another guy inside with a machine gun. But it was an armored tracked vehicle that was supposed to go through difficult terrain. So you imagine, again, those guys over there, if they're on the opposite side of you, they can't just get up out of their trenches and rush at you because you got machine guns. But if they had a big metal tracked vehicle that they could hide behind, that solves a problem. What problem does the machine gun solve?
Kill soldiers that are already inside the base.
No, not quite. And it's okay. That's why we're doing this. It's fun to see what we can come up with. All right, let me pause you right there. Let me pause you. What do you think the goal of this exercise is? Other than to talk about new technology in the Great War, what else are we accomplishing here? I've given you a difficult task. You don't know much about these 6 things, and yet I said, find a solution for it. What's the practical, real-world application to what we're doing right now in this class? The real-world application is that many of you will work for companies that aren't even companies yet to solve problems that aren't even problems yet. And you'll do so in a collaborative environment like you're doing now. You might be tasked with, hey, you need to figure this out. What's the best solution for this? Or how do we do that better? Or how are we going to manage that issue? And you're going to do it in an environment like this. So you all have about the same amount of knowledge, which with these 6 things is very little, if not none. And we're brainstorming. We're using our brains. It's a lot more efficient way of learning than me just saying, and next we have the rifle. The rifle was invented in 1849. It was used. That would be boring, right? I want you to do the heavy lifting. So I've given you a difficult task on purpose. All right? And some of you are way off base, and that's awesome. And some of you are right on, and that's awesome. Doesn't matter if we get the answer right or we get it wrong. What matters is, are we brainstorming? Are we talking? Are we trying to figure it out? Because again, many of you will have jobs that will have similar goals when you're older. So let's just first talk about the rifle, okay? This is not just any rifle. This is a new and improved rifle. And many of us don't know much about firearms, and that's okay. But does anybody know what the improved rifle, what problem that would solve in this global conflict? Tyler? Okay, good. It solves the problem of having inaccurate and unreliable problems. The ability for all these nations to mass produce weapons that all were the same, that handled the same, that operated the same, that worked in wet, dry, muddy conditions was essential to being effective in combat. These weapons, these rifles were also outfitted oftentimes with a knife at the end of it. We could see how that would be effective in a trench environment. Tyler, what is, when we talk about a rifle, what does that term refer to? Do you know the answer to that? Rifle? Oh, Nick, go ahead. It comes from the term rifling, which means what? Yeah, so if you ever look inside a barrel of a rifle, there's grooves in it, like corkscrew grooves that go down it. And what that does is that makes the bullet spin As it's being fired, obviously it happens in a blink of an eye, but as a bullet is being fired through the barrel of a rifle, it starts spinning. And that spinning, caused by the grooves inside the barrel, called rifling, causes that bullet to go where it's aimed. Without the rifling, that bullet would just come out and it would tumble, making it not aerodynamic, meaning its distance wouldn't be very great. So rifling improves during this time too. And machinists have the ability to, inside a small barrel, to be able to put those grooves in it to make sure those bullets are accurate. So there's actually lots of engineering and science that goes into something that we consider to be simple, like a rifle. Good. Okay, the next thing, you have a machine gun there. What problem during this time does the machine gun solve? Nick Gregory?
Soldiers with rifles.
Sorta. Let's expand upon that. Yes.
In trench warfare, it was able to stop Russians.
Okay, good. Now remember, we're in a trench warfare environment here. And we talked about early on, y'all would get up out of your trench and run at them, and vice versa. What do machine guns do for you at this time? They enable you to, when people in mass came running at you, you could lay down a lot of bullets in a short amount of time to kill those people. And machine guns are one of the main reasons why this, and trenches obviously, are one of the main reasons why this conflict is so deadly. It solves the problem of what do I do when they all come running at me en masse. Good. Good. All right, now it gets a little more difficult. Next up, we have a Zeppelin, okay, or a blimp. This one's more difficult. It says, I went around the room and heard a variety of answers. And I liked what I heard. It was creative. Here's what blimps don't do. They can't drop bombs. Okay? They can't really drop anything other than paper. And oftentimes they did drop paper to spread propaganda on the battlefield. You have a blimp in the air. Again, let's use the us versus them mentality here as our desks are set up. If you wanted to get a message to those guys, you have this blimp way up in the air. They could be up for days at a time, and you could, when a breeze comes from behind you, you could drop these leaflets and know that they would float over to their side. And that happened quite often. We talk about propaganda at home. Propaganda was also used on the battlefield too. What other problem does a blimp solve for people? Let's hear from someone besides Carson and Nick. Anybody over here have it? Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Very good. So we know we're in the midst of this trench warfare. We've been in it for years. We have an intelligence issue. We don't know how extensive or where their troops are. But if we could get up into a blimp and we could stare out over their elaborate trench system and see where it is. Can we outmaneuver them over here? Are they weak over here? That intelligence is very effective in planning how we move forward. Yes, it solves the problem of I need to know where their troops are. Excuse me. I need to know where those machine gun emplacements are. I need to know if we could possibly go around them. It gives me lots of information. Today in 2016, we have multitude of satellites in outer space that answer those questions on a variety of things. What are the Iranians doing? What are the Russians doing? What's going on in Syria? We have, from outer space, can take pictures of those things. A blimp is just a non-space version of that. It can map things out. Gives us lots of intelligence. Good. What's the next one? The tank. The first tanks ever used were used during World War I. What problem do you think the tank solved? Now, again, because I heard a lot of answers, let me address this. Tanks at this time aren't like the tanks that we think of today. They don't have big turrets that can shoot big artillery pieces out of. They might have a machine gun or two on them. Other than that, it's just a big tracked metal vehicle. What problem do you what problem do you think the tank solves? Tyler? Moving without another position without being shot or killed. Correct. And how does a tank achieve that, Tyler? Yeah. So we talked about we got these ditches everywhere, trenches, right? And we've got barbed wire and machine guns. So again, we can't just get out of our trenches and go sprinting at you because you're just going to kill us all. But if we could have vehicles, and by the way, they were on tracks, not wheels. Why do you think that is? How does that help, David?
Muddy terrain.
Yeah, it was just awful terrain, difficult terrain, uneven. So they're on tracks. So that solves that problem. They're armored, meaning they have very thick metal. Can't shoot through them. Then we could hide, and then if I could hide behind something, and then as we get on your trenches, then jump into your trenches. Well, then now we got a fighting chance. Good. The biplane. What do you think the biplane does? Actually, let's just press pause there. Period's about to end. Good collaboration today. Stupid.